the LaxFactor Podcast.
What is up, college lacrosse fans? You're watching episode number 294 of the LaxFactor Podcast. I'm your host, Ted Hoost, and today's episode all about Division 3 lacrosse. I don't have a special name for it. It's just my podcast, but Tuesdays are for Division 3. We're going to go in and talk about a bunch of the games against ranked opponents or just some other good games throughout the week, and we're going to do a segment called our D3 Freaks of the Week because there are always D3 guys putting up big, weird, funky numbers. This week was kind of tame, I thought, and I've got a little over my head in terms of the number of guys that I'm going to cover in this week's first edition of that. But we're going to talk about some big performers here, and I got about 8 games that we're going to talk about. And then we'll kind of, at the end of it, we'll go through how this is going to work in the future. And I need advice from you all. So please, if you're watching this episode now, in the comments, let me know what games do you want me to cover? What teams do I need to cover? What players are the big cats that I need to cover, even though I kind of already have an idea. So that's it. As always, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, go to LaxFactor.com, buy yourself a t-shirt because all of our videos get flagged and we make almost no revenue off of our ads because the big networks are always taking our money. So that is it. Let's move on here. First game I want to talk about is Grove City. Hey, they're only 1-4. I'd posit they might be the best 1-4 team in the country because their losses have come to some pretty good teams. Now, Christopher Newport, they've already played another game since this one. They beat Scranton 17-7 since this double overtime thriller against Grove City, but it's worth skipping over the Scranton game to go back in time and talk about this one that was played on Saturday instead. That's going to be one of the challenges with D3. D1, it's pretty easy to talk about the games on the weekends, and it's a game per week on average for each team. In this case, some of these teams are playing 2 or 3 games in the next 5 days, so that part will be interesting to figure out the flow as I kind of do this podcast here. Brett Jackson. Enter Brett Jackson, and specifically Brett Jackson, the attackman, entered through the box on the play that set up the game-winning goal in the second overtime. He's one of their starting 3 attack. Pretty much got the ball at the top as he was the last guy to sub on, went right to the cage, long, drawn-out sweep from left to right across the field here, stuck it left-handed on the far pipe for the game winner. Jackson ended up finishing the game with 2 goals and a helper. Logan Shassian, 3 goals. They each put up 3 points in that one. 5 guys put up 2 points. Very spread out scoring as we kind of look down here through the point totals overall. For Grove City, not much different, except they had their scoring concentrated up here with Zachary Hogan, 5 goals, 2 helpers off 11 shots. So he had a heck of a game and helped Grove City keep pace here. And then everyone below him, bunch of guys here. We had a guy with 3 points and a bunch of guys with 4. So their scoring was pretty spread out, albeit top heavy with Hogan over here. As always is the case at the D3 level, you had some other guys feast. For CNU, they had 2 long poles that had big games. Brett Kelly had a goal, 3 caused turnovers, and 2 GBs. And line mate Mark Davison went for a goal, 2 caused turnovers, and 4 GBs. Warner Cabanas, let's go here. Warner Cabanas won 16 of 27 of the draws, 59% there, 9 ground balls, so that's not a bad day. That was badly needed, especially because his goalkeeper, Mason Bellinger, had a rough day. So when you're winning that many possessions here and your goaltender's struggling, I always say one stat can offset, a good day out of a face-off guy can offset a bad day out of your goalkeeper, and that kind of works that way with anybody, honestly, here. Obviously, the good day that Hogan had helped his team keep pace a little bit here. As stated, CNU beat up on Scranton on Sunday, and once again, their scoring was spread out. If we went here and we kind of dive in to look at the Scranton game, yeah, you can see here. And different guys jumping in here. Jamie Smith going for 3-1. Jackson, another big day, 4 goals. But you can see they're getting spreading from everybody on their scoring from everybody on their roster, especially in these games that they should be handling. Grant Ganucci. I don't know how to pronounce that name. Grant Ganucci. You can look at it right here. He took the lion's share faceoff. So I don't know if that was a calculated thing. He goes 11 of 13. Here for CNU, and Cabanas only took 4 of 5, so I don't know if that was got a lead, get some other guys. Maybe Ganucci is their normal number 1. I'm just diving into D3, so I don't fucking know yet, but we're going to figure it out here. But he ended up having a great day at the dot, 11 of 13. That's just under what I would have needed to see him, especially in the fact that it's a blowout. If he had gone 12 of 13, he would have made the freaks of D3 or whatever the hell I'm calling it segment. But yeah, not quite there. CNU has John Carroll and Roanoke up over the next couple of days. Grove City has Roanoke, and then Eastern up over that same span. And we are going to now dive into the first the segment we are calling D3 Freaks of the Week. Cameron Russo from Bethany, a senior midfielder in a 1911 win over Anderson. Dude put up 4 goals, 5 assists, 1 caused turnover, and had 3 GBs. So congrats to him. And in terms of what I'm looking for here, 9 points or more. I feel like 8 points, not necessarily going to get you there unless it's a low scoring game. But I 9 points or more gets you there. It can't be an absolute blowout like 20-4 generally, unless you really go crazy. For a face-off guy, for instance, it's got to be a win. You're only getting on there if it's a blowout if you've won all but like one of your draws. So we'll see that, but criteria will probably change a little bit, but we'll see how it goes here. Next one, Brian McGuire from Marymount, senior attackman, 19-7 win over Greensboro. Dude put up 4 goals, 5 assists, and a GB. Next guy who we got here, Clay Elmgren, and it'll be funny too here because I can't pronounce some of these guys' names when we do this segment. Some of them will have the phonetic spelling, so I'll be able to be a little bit smarter here. Clay Elmgren, though, of Swarthmore fame, junior attack / mid, 19-8 win over Elizabethtown. Dude put up 3 goals, 6 helpers, and 3 caused turnovers. So that's pretty damn good. Parker Merrill, Parker Merrill from Tufts, senior faceoff guy, 18-7 win over Connecticut. So this was borderline, but like I said, it was an extraordinary game. Dude went 12 of 12, 100% at the faceoff dot with 5 GBs. I was hoping to see some faceoff guys score goals this weekend and have these big games together. That did not happen apparently here. We now have David Azzarano, from Immaculata, graduate student attack in an 18-13 win over FDU Florham. He goes for 4 goals, 5 assists, 8 ground balls, 1 caused turnover. That might be the biggest game here between the 8 GBs with a caused turnover and 9 points. So that is not too bad here. We have Chad Coleman, Carthage, sophomore, face-off guy. This was one 20-4 win over Lawrence. It was a dick kicking, as they would say, but he goes 18 of 19, 95% at the dot, 13 GBs, and a goal. That gets you on the Freaks of the Week for damn sure. Chad Coleman, is that the guy I just did here? Yeah, Chad Coleman was the guy I just did. Chris Soul, Ithaca, senior face-off guy, 16-4 win over Weidner. 14 of 15, 93%, 7 GBs. The dude does not look at all like the guy that would be your face-off guy. This looks like somebody that would like sell you insurance or something like that, I believe. I'm hoping we get some dope pictures here also. This one I had to throw out. I don't have a single player on here. I mean, it was Bo Burns was 14 and 22, 7 GBs. That's not enough by itself to get you in. But the Bowden face-off group in a 16-15 win over Trinity, 1 goal win, combined for 24 of 34. Bo Burns, 14 of 22 with 7 GBs. Cam Whitfeld, 6 of 8 with 2 GBs. Luke Harrington, 3 of 3. Michael Norton, 1 of 1. The guys at the end of the row there end up winning 4 of 4 to really put them over the top. So you go 24 of 34 in a 1-goal win over Trinity. Credit to you. You definitely contributed to that victory in a lopsided manner. Ben Franco, Lycoming, senior goalkeeper, 10-8 win over Allegheny, 19 saves, 8 goals against, 70%. I don't know if that's normally going to take the cake, but you get up into the 19 save region in a 2-goal win, you're probably handling things pretty well. So, yep. And he also, oh no, I was going to say he had an assist too, but he did not here. And then this one I thought was funny because Jake Raniero, Drew sophomore, face-off guy, 15-6 win over Drew, so he's not a Drew sophomore. Or he does play for Drew. I don't know who they beat in this game now as I'm looking at it. But does this guy not look like Ashton Kutcher if he was from New Jersey and a lacrosse bro? I thought that was kind of funny. He goes 19 of 24, 79%, 14 ground balls, and a helper. The 14 ground balls is the reason I decided to throw him in here. Normally, 19 of 24, again, in a blowout win doesn't get you there, but 14 GBs is a lot. And he looks like Ashton Kutcher's New Jersey lacrosse bro brother, maybe a love child. We don't know. We don't know about these things. Next game, number 2, Salisbury against number 18, Lynchburg. Now, Salisbury has 2 wins over ranked opponents so far, at least ranked at the time they had played. They've beaten Lynchburg over the weekend, as we were going to talk about here, and then they beat Gettysburg as their signature win up to this point. But, beating Lynchburg is always going to be a solid day if you're a Salisbury. It was 5-1 at the end of the first, 8-1 at one point early in the second, and 14-4 about halfway through the third. So the final score of 18-13, I don't think shows that Salisbury really did handle this game from start to finish pretty much. Long pole Bryce Stevenson had a day. Scored a goal, 3 caused turnovers, 6 ground balls. Bryce Bromwell had more goals than assists for the first time this season, 4 goals, 3 helpers. And teammate Connor Herrey's 2 goals, 4 assists. He puts up 6 points. In the end, Salisbury, very opportunistic. And one stat I found interesting was, if we go through multiple stats, they took better care of the ball, -6 in turnovers, so they win that battle. They were 2-2 on extra man opportunities, whereas Lynchburg was 0-2. They outshot Lynchburg by a margin, 52-34. I didn't have the shots on goal available, as I usually like to go by that metric more. They didn't have that stat here. That'll be interesting as we do the D3 podcast also to see how much worse off the stat keeping is overall, but it hasn't been too bad so far here. And then another thing is I think Salisbury just did a better job in transition. An example of that is Salisbury's first 3 goals were all scored within 30 seconds of them getting the ball on the defensive end and then transitioning to offense. 2 of them off forced turnovers. The other one was off a Nick Ransom save. So in the first half, overall, 4 of Salisbury's 8 goals were all scored within 30 seconds of them taking possession. Not necessarily fast breaks or full-on transition either. I believe this game was on Flow, and Flow can eat shit. I refuse to purchase that subscription specifically, only because they're bad for every sport they've ever entered in, and everybody in the lacrosse world should be wary. I've never heard a single person say a good thing about them because they're greedy. They just come in, buy up the student broadcast that should be free to everybody so that everybody could watch your game. Instead, they put it behind an overpriced paywall, crappy production. They do nothing to provide value to the schools outside of probably handing them a check. Terrible for the fans, albeit I'd posit it's terrible for the schools as well, although maybe they're getting a little bit of money for these student broadcasts that they wouldn't otherwise. So I thought that was interesting, though. Not full-on transition, but definitely getting the ball into the offensive end of the field, going to the rack. One thing I've marveled at, and I didn't see this game, but I did watch one of Salisbury's earlier games. I watched, what was it? The win over, who the hell was that win over that I did watch the game? The win over Gettysburg. Duh, I'm an idiot. Was deep shots, man. Deep shots will go at the D3 level. You do not see people at the Division I level taking shots from this deep that as regularly as these guys do. And it's not necessarily because there's poorer goalies. It's just, I think probably a little bit more hands-free from downtown, a little bit more than you would see at that D1 level. Anyway, not much more to say because, like I said, this wasn't as close of a game as even the 5-goal spread at the end of the game would indicate here. Lynchburg at 1-2, that looks rough, but that other loss came to Gettysburg, albeit by a margin. So Lynchburg did lose to Gettysburg, 16-9. So, even by a slightly larger spread here than what they lost to Salisbury by. So I think that the coaching staff and the players of Lynchburg are probably not pleased with these 2 outcomes, but they're going to be above 500 and be fine here by the end of it. They just got to, play a couple of chumps here. Lynchburg has Denison up next. Salisbury has Wesleyan and Ohio Wesleyan over the next 10 days. Next one, Amherst and Middlebury. Now, this was a very good game through the first quarter and a half, but after Patrick Jamin, is that Jamin? Probably it's Jamin. Tied things up at 5s for Middlebury. Amherst went on a big run, scoring 11 of the next 12 goals en route to this 16-7, or en route to a 16-6 lead that ended up being eventually 16-7. Alex Giacobbe. I actually looked that one up. I believe it's pronounced Giacobbe. He went 3-2. Bog Gross. Who the hell is Bog Gross? Oh, Bob Gross. I have Bog Gross, and D3 has weird enough names here and there that I thought this dude's name might legitimately be Bog. Bob Gross, he goes 3-1. Five guys had at least 4 points on the day. Lawson Laverty had 4 caused turnovers and 4 ground balls. Fogo Nicholas Kopp won 18 of 23 draws with only 3 GBs. So if that's correct, who the hell are the kids on this dude's wing? Like, if this dude won 18 draws and only had 3 GBs, I assume, once again, statistical anomaly, but credit to his wings on the faceoff if they were picking up that many loose balls over time. Amherst ended up winning just about every stat. They outshot them 53-23. Ground balls 37-21. Faceoffs won 18-7. Extra man, Amherst went 2 of 2. Middlebury went 0 of 1. Now, the rankings that I show in my data here, it's got Middlebury at number 9 and Amherst at number 16. The rankings here on the screen are either updated from before when mine weren't, so we got number 10 against number 12. But I'm never sure, is maybe Inside Lacrosse using their poll, and maybe there's a coach's poll that I'm getting from the other. So I'll figure that out so I can get it right. But yeah, technically an upset, or technically not an upset by this. But per the other poll, it was. So I don't get it. We'll see how that goes. Amherst. Amherst has Hamilton and Springfield over the next 10 days. Middlebury will take on RPI and Bowden before this weekend is over. Now, this one, kind of a throwaway game. Generally, I'm going to try to cover games that are at least important and within the top 20 because you got to find a way to pick them. But wherever there's a weird outlier like this where we have a game that goes into triple overtime, I figure it's worth mentioning here. So DeSales was down by 2 goals with under a minute to play. Jake Fratercangeli, who knows how the hell to say that dude's name. His parents should shorten it. He scored with 57 seconds remaining to get back to within 1. Mark Winkler Jr. scored off a Fratercangeli, whatever his name is, feed with only 5 ticks left on the clock to not to score up at 11s and then force OT. And it was Harry Schweitzer who scored unassisted with 3:23 left in the third overtime that scored the goal that gave Ursinus their first win of the season. It was his second goal of the game. Now, if the stat sheet is correct, Ursinus took 8 shots in OT to DeSales 1, 4 in the first OT, 3 in the second, and just a single shot that was also the game winner in that final quarter. DeSales squandered 3 of their 4-man up opportunities. That probably hurt them. Other than that, this was a pretty good dogfight throughout the game. So credit to everyone. Stevenson and Gettysburg. Now, slow first quarter, but the Bullets were up 3-1 by the end. Stevenson managed to get the score knotted up at 3s about halfway through that second quarter, but then Gettysburg scored 9 of the game's next 11 goals en route to a 12-5 lead by the end of the third quarter, and they go on to win 15-6. Charlie Johnson was an animal for Gettysburg. He scored 7 goals and had a dish off 16 shots, throw in 5 ground balls to go along with that as well. Gettysburg keeper Murphy Hoey, he had 15 saves to just 6 goals against, winning the goalie battle by a mile. His counterpart, Tyler Merchant, struggled. He had 8 saves, 15 goals against, and albeit I think the Stevenson defense put him in some tough situations overall. Stevenson had 7 penalties. Gettysburg turned 3 of them into goals. That's never going to be good. They were 2 of 4 over the second half while they kind of started to pull away. Gettysburg, they have Washington and Lee up next, while Stevenson will face Dickinson. And then this is one of the ones, ranked team, playing against York here. I probably would have let this one go if they had beat York up by a little bit more than they did, but York, being a scrappy team, ends up kind of hanging tight here. Gave RIT a bit of trouble. They kept pace through most of the game into about halfway through the third, at which point the Tigers rattled off 4 straight goals en route to a 15-10 lead, and they eventually take the win home 15-12. Credit York, though, for being physical and playing tough through that entire game. They won the ground ball battle. They stayed out of the penalty box. They limited their turnovers, at least as compared to RIT, as they both teams had a bunch of turnovers in this one, and York was able to put a higher percentage of their shots on cage, as that's more important than your regular shot metric here. RIT had won 12 of 19 faceoffs over the first half, but then York cleaned that up in the second half, winning 8 of 12. So credit Hugo Spencer of York for going 15 of 28 on the day, is keeping the battle at that dot, pretty much even, gave his offense opportunities to be extremely efficient and put up goals where they just didn't have as many possessions overall. For RIT, balanced scoring attack is as you'd usually expect from a game that was kind of a blowout, albeit it ended up not being a blowout. It was kind of like a Yale blowout where it's like RIT controlled the game, for most of it, but they were allergic to playing defense on the day, and so you end up having a spread out, scoring when your team can virtually score at will, which they did to some degree here. Yeah, they had how many guys? 4 players put up 3 points, and another 4 guys were sitting on 2. Seth Grottenthaler was the high goal scorer for RIT, 3 goals off 5 shots. York scoring was pretty much highly concentrated into their starting attack. Nate Schilling 4-1, Gavin Gismondi 2-3, Davis Fisher 2-2. They all had great days. Both goalies were below 50%, but RIT's Alex Zabrowski won the battle with 11 saves versus the 12 goals against. He's a little bit better than his counterpart. His team wins the game, and RIT will have Geneseo and Ursinus up over the next 5 days, whereas York is going to have Randolph-Macon up next. And I just love saying some of these names, hearing some of these schools here. I'm not picking my nose, as my kids would say. I just had to itch, man. And I'm sitting here on camera. What am I going to do? Yeah, I just love saying some of these names, though. Some of these schools, it brings back memories here, hearing these names from back in my D3 days. Washington and Lee against Denison in this one. So pretty good game here. 7-6 at the half, and Denison just does enough over the course of, outscores them by a goal in the first half, outscores them by a goal in the second half. They end up winning this game. And as we look at Denison scores here, Mackie Peck. Mackie Peck, is that dude's name? Because that's a sick name. 4 goals in this one, 67% shooting, just had 6 shots. Colin Murphy, 3 goals, so that's not too bad. James Haley has a big day over here for Washington and Lee. 5 goals. What did the goalies do in this one? Not a great day to be a goalie, but the Denison goalie, Andrew Albert, won that battle for damn sure. 11 saves, 12 goals against. Didn't get shellacked like his buddy. And then Denison loses the faceoff battle. Still wins the game overall, though. So there was another ranked game that we had to talk about. And if we go through here and we look at what's coming up this week, today we've got a big slate of games. Do we have any ranked ones? Number 20, Babson, is going to take on Nichols. What else do we have here? Utica and Hamilton here in upstate New York, rocking over there on that side of the highway. Yeah, not a whole lot of signature games here happening today. As I said, Christopher Newport, number 5 in the country. They take on John Carroll. Dickinson has Kenyon at home. Ithaca and Nazareth are going to be playing tomorrow. Cuca. I played a year at Cuca. 1 goal, 11 assists my freshman year. Scored the game-winning goal in sudden death overtime in our very first game of the year, and then never scored another goal the rest of the year. That was against Hamilton, I believe. We played at Hamilton that first game under the lights. Pretty dope way to start your college career. Ended with me getting booted from school for doing dumb shit, and I'm not a role model. Do not pick me as your role model overall. RPI, that'll be a big one. RPI hosting Middlebury, number 6 versus number 12. I say hosting. They are the home team. I don't know where the game's being played because at this point of the year, I understand at any point a bunch of D3 schools could just congregate at one warm location and all play, 15 games. What else do we have? It's always going to be a treat having to rip through these games here. St. John Fisher in action against Aurora, number 17, St. John Fisher. Yeah, so all the really good ranked games, we got to wait until the weekend to get to them for the most part here. Babson again in action against Western New England. There's another good one. Bowden and Middlebury, number 7 Bowden at number 12 Middlebury on Saturday. Number 19 Stevenson at number 14 Dickinson on Saturday. Gettysburg, number 9 against number 11 Washington and Lee. That should be a good one. RPI has the nerds from MIT, so we have a bunch of really smart engineering nerds rocking on Saturday at MIT. Tufts has Trinity. That should be a general bloodbath. Christopher Newport and Roanoke. That could be interesting. RIT and Ursinus. Oh, there's the big one here. Number 2, Salisbury against number 4, Wesleyan. That should be a monster game, and that's as far as we're going to go. Oh, no, we got Denison, number 16 Denison, and number 18 Lynchburg. Okay, so I get it. This episode sucked. I had to just pull the Band-Aid off, get an episode out, feel the flow. I understand my flow was terrible and I apologize. I will be better next week when I do this again. Next week will include some highlights and things of that sort. I just didn't have a lot of time to plan it. I kind of decided Friday or Saturday this was the route. So next week I'll be a little bit more organized. I'll have a couple more segments specific to players and things of that sort. So I'm going to just try to make it personal. I'm going to try to touch on more games in a smaller way, simply so more kids could get their names shouted out over the airwaves and everything like that. So that's the goal with this, is just to put some shine on D3 lacrosse, eventually get back into throwing highlights up of some of these D3 lacrosse games and things of that sort, and go from there. So Thursday's show, come back Thursday. We've got the D1 weekend preview show where we will preview the weekend's games and what you can look forward to. I'll make some picks and things of that sort. I'll actually go through and I'm going to figure out what I am in terms of score for the year. So for Thursday's show, I'll go through how I've done thus far, and then we'll make our picks for this upcoming week. And then Sunday show, as always, weekend recaps for D1. So that's the schedule: Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, put out full podcasts, and then we'll do little videos and things like that in between. So that is it. As always, be sure to like, subscribe, share the crap out of the podcast with your friends. Go to LaxFactor.com, get yourself a t-shirt. We have the LaxFactor t-shirt as well as a bunch of non-LaxFactor related t-shirts, just random t-shirts that I've designed over time. So support us that way. And as always, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and Hoost is out.
The LaxFactor Podcast.